So there is a report coming out of San Francisco from Tim Kawakami, who is a longtime 49ers insider. This report came out a couple days ago, but the report says there's still frustration about the way Brandon Aiyuk handled his bitter negotiations last summer, and that members of the front office were never thrilled about giving him a $30 million a year deal on the eve of the regular season. So obviously, looking back at this contract, probably wasn't the best idea of giving Brandon Aiyuk $30 million. He blew out his ACL, not even midway through the season last year. And it's a serious knee injury. I mean, there's multiple people expecting Brandon Aiyuk to not return until at least after Thanksgiving next year. And we'll see what happens. I mean, I've seen crazier things happen. Um, I think it really comes down to Brandon Aiyuk's work ethic and how much he truly puts into his rehab situation. I think it's really all up to him on how soon he comes back. But obviously, hindsight's always 2020, and the 49ers gave Brandon Aiyuk $30 million per year, um, and then he blows out his ACL a couple months later. So it's one of those things. It was just an unfortunate situation that kind of transpired. But I'll be the first to say, like, giving Brandon Aiyuk $30 million a year before the knee injury really wasn't the best of ideas. Obviously, I was pretty adamant all off season long about the 49ers keeping Brandon Aiyuk around and making sure that they lock him up. But it got to a point in time where, the 49ers were offering Brandon Aiyuk money and he wasn't accepting it. He wanted that $30 million per year mark. And eventually the 49ers folded like they typically do, and they paid him $30 million per year on a 4-year deal. So, again, I mean, looking back at the contract and whatnot, like, it definitely wasn't the best idea of paying Brandon Aiyuk, especially after knowing that he tore his ACL. But again, hindsight's always 2020. And, at the end of the day, the 49ers couldn't have seen that coming where, he has this terrible knee injury not even midway through the season. But I still think it's interesting how there are still members of the front office kind of irritated and frustrated about the way Brandon Aiyuk handled the negotiations. Um, and obviously, not only that, but the 49ers folding and giving him what he wanted. There were trade suitors for Brandon Aiyuk, before signing the contract extension. Pittsburgh Steelers were one of the teams that were heavily involved in a potential trade for Brandon Aiyuk, but Kyle Shanahan probably was like, you know what? We can't lose Brandon Aiyuk. He's a very important piece to this offense, and which he is. Just give him what he wants. They did that with Nick Bosa, too. They did that with Nick Bosa a couple years ago, and they gave him a monster contract extension. I think it was the richest contract for a defensive player in the history of the NFL. Fast forward a couple years later, there's not a single defensive player that has trumped Nick Bosa's contract. So I think when you look at the Nick Bosa situation, that's just as worse. I mean, obviously he hasn't had a serious injury, or thank God, but Nick Bosa hasn't really been the dominant player that we know him of over the last couple of seasons. And again, there's still not a defensive player out there that has been extended and has gotten more money than Nick Bosa's contract. And it's been 2 years since that contract. So the Nick Bosa contract was pretty bad too, but obviously you had to lock him up. But the Brandon Aiyuk thing, man, I'm not sure. And obviously this is coming from Tim Kawakami. It's a report. How much truth there is to that, I don't know, but I definitely think it's believable. I'll be the first to say without a doubt, there has to be some members of the 49ers front office that aren't thrilled about Brandon Aiyuk being paid $30 million a year. And it even looks more worse now knowing that he blew out his knee and tore his ACL. So I don't know. Thought it was a pretty interesting report. Wanted to come on here and give my kind of 2 cents on it and whatnot. But, obviously the hope is that Brandon Ayuk can come back and be that player that we all know him of. But it's going to be a long road to recovery, man. Like the knee injury that he suffered is very, very bad. There's multiple, you know, there's tendon damage and cartilage damage, and it's a more serious knee injury, I think, than anybody could have seen coming. And that's why I think his return date is pushed back a long time, because it's probably going to take a long time to recover from that. But at the end of the day, it's all up to Brandon Ayuk on how soon he comes back. And I think we'll learn a lot about his work ethic and how he is as, you know, as a player more so than we did before. Just kind of seeing how he's going to be able to handle this recovery process and the rehab and whatnot. So, um, do the 49ers regret giving Brandon Ayuk $30 million a year? I think right now they probably do. I think before the knee injury, I don't think there were too many people that probably thought too much about it. But I think really realistically, after the knee injury, there probably are some people within the 49ers organization that are very frustrated and are probably kicking themselves for giving him $30 million a year, and then, not even midway through the season, he blows out his knee, and he's probably gonna miss majority of next season as well. So I don't know. Will Brandon Ayuk ever be the same player? I hope so, but I mean, some people don't come back, from knee injuries and are able to be the same player that they once were. So again, we're gonna learn a lot about the character of Brandon Ayuk. We're gonna learn a lot about his work ethic. And again, it's all up to him on how long it's going to take him to recover from this knee injury, and return to the field. So let me know what you guys think of this report, though, in the comments down below. Again, it's coming from Tim Kawakami, and he's reporting that there is frustration within the 49ers front office, and that members of the front office were never thrilled about giving him $30 million a year on his contract extension. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. As always, go Niners. I'll see you guys in the next one.